A very good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be back at the Success Happy Hour Experience. I am Rob, your host from The Drunken Grape. And today we're talking about why freedom of speech must prevail. And I have my freedom consultant and expert. He has an amazing podcast called the Launchpad Podcast. This is Jason Petrunik. He is a professional broadcaster by background and radio host, radio station host or live host on the radio. I mean, that's just a cool background. And we're really going to get into it. Of course, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to smash the likes, comment on this show. Make sure to reach out and subscribe to Jason's channel. We're going to have that in the show notes. One thing I always believe, it's very important when you showcase people to really share them. This is much more about them than it is about me on the show. Of course, we do get into a happy hour a little later in this show. We're going to crack a great beer. Jay, we're talking about this NVIDIA. This is Zevenzoden or Seven Sins. This is a Belgian strong dark ale that's highly rated, something like 91 points by Beer Advocate, 10% alcohol. Ooh, bottle fermentation or second fermentation and bottle conditioning, that's probably getting closer to 11. Don't want to have too much of that, and make sure to drink responsibly, ladies and gentlemen. Getting to it, Jason, welcome to the show. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here. And go figure, it's kind of come full circle with you and I. As we kind of prefaced in the last podcast, we were kind of at odds politically for a while, but we always kept it respectful. We would just basically do our best to keep it civil. And I would never think in such a short period of time we would be so level in regards to how we view the world right now. And one thing was never different is that we did value freedom, and we do value freedom of speech. We just had a different way of going about it, some different perspectives. But it's really fascinating to be having this conversation with you right now, and the last one as well.
Yeah, and we think about even with the vaccine mandate. At the beginning I was for it because I wanted to get us out of the mess. You were against it. I never suppressed people on that view. I just tried to encourage them to get the vaccine, which is really now a health booster, not a vaccine at all. And I stopped after shot number 3. I just thought, listen, that's enough. I've got enough of this in my system, and it's experimental. Let's stop right there. I know people who are on shot 7 and 8 now. Like, what's the point? Wait until there's a proven vaccine. And, going to that, I mean, this ties into freedom of speech. So the suppression of freedom of speech really started during the pandemic, I believe. I mean, what's your views on this?
You know what? I think it goes back further than that, really. And we just didn't really see it. And I think it was really brought to light through the pandemic. We weren't necessarily suppressed by what we could say in regards to government suppressing other doctors, government suppressing social medias, governments also suppressing news, which they do. We get like kind of half truths at best sometimes. And I noticed that especially when I was at the trucker convoy myself and then listening to the news report on it. But we've been kind of policing ourselves in regards to freedom of speech for quite some time, to where if you were to speak out against a narrative that was prevalent at the time, you kind of get a little bit of a slap on the wrist, especially being in a government town like Ottawa. And so if there was some type of social justice type thing or awareness, for the most part, we would just go with it and say, we'll maybe change our Facebook picture or wear a certain color of shirt, where, we just want to make sure, we're going to just get along. We're going to get along, and I'm just going to play my role. And to where, I feel very confident saying that I don't support a whole bunch of causes, because I just don't have the time to get behind whatever flag is popular at the time. I support people's right to do what they want to do with their body, just like I wanted to have people respect me for what I wanted to do with my body during the pandemic. And I don't need to get behind any other cause than that. Treat people well, respect their wishes, and personally, leave me alone. Just let me do my own thing, because I'm going to give you that same respect in return.
Yeah, and we really demonized it. You go, my body, my choice is such a great slogan when we're talking the abortion debate. And we're not going to get into that, but I'm just going to use that as just a flag, like a point, right? or we get into my body, my choice with gender conversion. But somehow it's not your choice if you refuse to take a vaccine that wasn't really a vaccine. It was a health booster, because a vaccine actually notably reduces and eliminates the disease, almost eradicates it completely from the population. That's what vaccines do. Do I think on my end it helped a bit? Certainly. And that's just my view. And again, you got to respect other people's views. But it wasn't respected for the few people, 8% of the population ultimately that said, we're not taking this ever. And, with science saying once we get to 75%, remember that? Once we get to 75% efficacy, vaccinations pumped out to 75% of the population, we'll call it the health booster from Moderna or Pfizer or AstraZeneca. You're supposed to have herd immunity, but the narrative did not stop there. And it's so contradictory because we are in a left-leaning government. It's so contradictory to Trudeau's left-leaning government on having choice for everything else but what they want you to do. And lo and behold, now we've got this insane bill C-11. And I mean, by the way, we're on ExpressVPN. Love it. You should switch to it, ladies and gentlemen. It allows me to connect from the States or many other countries around the world because I want to secure my privacy online. And I don't want to have my country, Canada, tell me what news I can and cannot read because they feel they get to handpick what journalism I get presented by. And this is what Bill C-11 has done. I mean, this is no joke. I have this here, and I'm going to share this with us while we're on the talk. I'm just trying to find the share button in here for a second. There we go. It's down below. So we're going to go and take a look at this for a second, my friend. And right over here, just see the bottom light right here. What is Bill C-11? Canadian freedoms. We're looking at, I'm just going to bring this up for a second. It's the dark side of C-11 and how it could silence Canadian voices. This is, we'll just close that out for a second. There we go. So that's a lot better. So it talks about in Russia right now, ironically, look at that. The current bestseller is George Orwell's 1984. Canada's best-selling books run from the gamut of Five Little Indians to Harry Potter to the Order of the Phoenix. And, we are what we read as well. And then you can see Freedom Convoys become a bestseller through Amazon. That's interesting as well. Journalist Andrew Lawton's book.
Right. Well, we don't want to face the realities is a big part of it. Like 1984 and George Orwell and stuff like that. That's here right now. And I've been saying that for quite some time. And it's through this thing right here. Some might be watching right now on one of these. And we are not questioning what we're seeing on the TV. And that's what 1984 is all about. This big black box telling people what to do and people just conforming because they don't want to get that slap on the wrist. And there's a lot of trauma-based programming. Just had a conversation about that with a gentleman named Jason Christoff, who's a self-sabotage coach. And we're in it. And there's people that get it and there's people that don't. And like you said, we are what we read, we are what we consume. And, we're into Disney and everyone's saying like, what's the next thing that I can binge on Netflix and what people should be doing. And I believe this is a construct of politics to where people say, don't discuss politics. That's bad. And I used to think that too. And they'll tell you shouldn't have a discussion with politics because it's going to lead to confrontation. And what we need to get better at is having constructive conversations, right? And respecting one another's opinions, spending a lot more time listening opposed to talking. And once we start relying on each other, once we start getting back to the whole we the people thing, right, and power with the people, and stop relying on government to save us to where we want to continue to relinquish our freedoms for security, then we will finally start making some progress. Because once we start getting along, Rob, once we all start having the conversations and just relying on government for infrastructure, which they're doing a horrendous job at, they'll be scared. And things will start to change in our favor.
Yep, absolutely. And I agree with you. The biggest elephant in the room that's not being talked about the pitchforks and baseball bats in a policy way, not a physical way. We're not condoning any violence here, but what needs to happen is the political knife has to be pulled out to the politicians and the senior bureaucrats. They need to feel the wrath and the heat of the population. The population needs to get united. And they love divide and conquer. They love to fill our heads with lies and half-truths because they only care about one thing. And this came up in your podcast recently. They just care about getting reelected. They don't care about doing the right thing. Very few do. You know what? You get 10% that do care. The other 90% just care about all the cushy perks and the fat pension and the power they get with being in office. They care very little. And, you know, even our mayor, I mean, I've yet to see what Sutcliffe has really done in Ottawa since he's been in office 200 days, other than attend a lot of social functions and put up nice social media posts. The roads are still bad. You know, we still have a chronic homeless problem. There's a lot of things that should have been tackled right away. The LRT is a disaster. And watch, as we get closer to his reelection phase, or, you know, we get another, as more heat comes on him for it, and I think there's going to be a lot more heat shortly, he will act all of a sudden very quickly. But why does it have to come to that? Do your job. Get it done from the get-go.
Well, that's what we allow. And you talked about this before we started recording.
That is what we allow, and it's a problem. And you know what? We're going to read a little bit about this. To the bill's sponsor, look at Liberal Minister Pablo Rodriguez insists that C11 does not target Canadians who like to make content like podcasts and videos, but under examination, the opposite is the case. John Carpe, president of the Justice Center, explains. And he is right. They're going to try and regulate everything. Again, ladies and gentlemen, there are certain steps you can take to protect yourself. One of them is get a VPN. So you can actually access your information from anywhere in the world to any country you choose as your secure location. And it's all through secure servers, so it protects you. You know, and on that note, we're going to drink the Seven Sins. This is Seven Zunders or Seven Sins. This is the manufacturer of this Belgian beer. It's called Nvidia. This is a strong, dark Belgian beer. Look at this thing. It looks almost like a stout. It looks like I'm drinking some form of coffee beer. Probably has a bit of those notes. Definitely has some roasted and burnt notes in the malting process. A lot of roasted flavors in here. Wow, has almost like a rum cake smell to it on top of that brown, heavy brown breadiness to it. That is rich and complex. There's a bit of cocoa and chocolate in there. Definitely some coffee notes as well. Pretty full-bodied beer. I would not want to drink a lot of these at a normal happy hour. Let's be honest. I mean, this at almost 11% being bottle conditioned, which is second fermentation in bottle. They fire a bit of brewer's yeast and sugar in there after they seal it up. Adds to carbonation. These aren't carbonated water bottled. They really go through carbonation through the fermentation process that houses the carbonation. So it's a bit softer, it's more subdued, it's a bit rounder. It presents a more balanced beer. It's not as sharp. But I tell you, Jay, what do you have in your hand? You made some coffee, did you not? I love coffee, by the way.
Just having a regular coffee.
Nothing wrong with coffee. That. You know, wherever you are.
Drinking out of a beer stein. What you can see of the beer stein with my green
water.
Screen.
Yes. But you know what?
Right.
We have some non-drinkers tune into the show, and I respect that. I mean, about 20% of the adult population, I think it's about 25% in the Western world, does not drink for a variety of reasons, ranging from getting over addiction, health. It's just not in their practice, never got into it, may have allergies to it, may have religious views against it, whatever it may be. And we're getting back to freedom of speech. That's their business, and that's okay. Just don't tell everybody else in the world they can't have a couple of drinks. Like the recent study, it said, oh my God, in Canada, if you have more than 2 alcoholic beverages in a week, it's bad. Doctors even sat back and laughed at that and refuted it, said, no, somebody could have a drink or two a day and be fine. So, you know, I always say drink in moderation like that and take a couple days off a week at least. You know, I personally enjoy the odd drink 3 to 4 times a week. That's it. Like that. There's the rest of the time I don't drink. And this is coming from a professional sommelier and beer sommelier, right? So, we respect that. And again, people are tuning in on their tablet, their phone, their computer, anywhere in the world to watch these podcasts. And it's a shame that the West, Canada, England now, Australia, New Zealand, what is with this planned agenda? Because it certainly seems that way. The states under Biden, why are they trying to restrict what the pinnacle of the Greeks, when they founded democracy a few thousand years ago, was based upon, which was open quorum and debate and the freedom to express yourself and exchange different views and come to a common focus? What happened to that?
Again, something I think's been gone for a while. And for people that were paying attention during the pandemic, they saw it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that didn't. In regards to the convoy, for instance, like the main point of the convoy, yes, it was to be a protest that people could see, like physically, like it was something that was tangible. And it was just the journey up here alone that rallied a lot of Canadians together and built up hope, which was a very low point for a lot of people, including myself.
It was a low point.
I had purpose during the convoy, but I was struggling too. I needed something like that. But the main purpose of them being here was to share data, with the TAMs and the Justin Trudeau's and, their health experts in regards to the data that the amazing virologists, 3 of the best that Canada had to offer, to sit down with them and just say, like, listen, we're just seeing different things here with the information. And instead of just having a conversation, like Justin Trudeau didn't even go out to the street curb to say hello. Well, he had COVID for the 10th time.
He was the coward at the cottage. Coward at the cottage. Coward at the cottage.
Right.
That's what I'm going to call him.
Is that
it was cowardice.
All they wanted to do was share that information, and they didn't want to do that. And I have said this numerous times in regards to how I think a lot of level-headed Canadians may have tried to get through this pandemic is I want to have the best minds on all sides. Right. And I want them to sit down and have a conversation. Now, they can do that privately, but I mean, in a perfect world, I don't know why conversations like that or debates like that can't be done in a public forum so people can decide for themselves what they want to do. Like, the best information will rise to the top, generally speaking. It's time for government to get out of the way and start respecting my intelligence to where, okay, I might buy into some things that are false. Maybe there are some things that, aren't good information, but that's for me to decipher. And it's not for you to decide. And that's how everything else kind of works. I don't know why it was so different when it came to the information during the pandemic. And that's what had me scratch my head.
Well, I tell you, anyone who doesn't respect democracy, and Trudeau's come out and said, and I'm actually a centrist liberal as a voter typically. Because before they had a business focus, before it was much more moderate, was down the middle. They were the party of the mass people of Canada because they were often in the middle. Elements of Harper's leadership was good. Jean Chrétien did a good job. Elements of him were strong. Elements of even Trudeau's father was strong in the sense that he did put through and expand upon the Bill of Rights with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. His father's rolling in his grave going, son, what are you doing? I put out a bill for people to express their views. You saw him calling journalists sissies on the Hill when he was with the FLQ crisis because he saw the FLQ as a threat to democracy. Such a different era and time. And now we move forward. There's censorships and controls on everything. They're trying to control what's taught to your kid in school. They're trying to censor everything you read. And this has been a planned approach for a while now. Now they're pushing the work from home mentality because it's easier to control people individually at home than it is when they unite in an office. A lot of people don't see this yet, but this is exactly what's going on. And it's all part of the play. And this is a reason, we're talking politics, and I do read a lot about global politics. My mother's from Guyana. I know I believe one of your parents is from St. Lucia. So we share that commonality of being part of the Caribbean because even though it's in South America, the Guyanese have always identified with the Caribbean. It's quite interesting. So Forbes Burnham came to power in either 66, I think something like 63 or 66. By 85, he died, and it was a blessing to the country because he was an autocrat. Claimed he was democratic. He was not. First couple things they do is they restrict firearm access. All of a sudden, they have gun control. All of a sudden, we've overblown guns as a problem in Canada, where they were never a problem. It's a problem in the hands of criminals, not lawful gun owners. The other part of it is we start to suppress what we see in the media and what we hear and what we read. And they start to tell you what they want to tell you. And this all reeks of despots. I mean, we do have a guy who said he appreciated the basic dictatorship of China. We should have been listening to what he was saying. The economy, I want to build it from my heart out. Deficits fix themselves, all sorts of nonsense here. But the big attack now is on your speech and your rights to read and see and digest the information that you read in front of you. I'm speechless.
The problem is, I think we've seen for the first time, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think he's left-leaning. I think he's far left, and I think that's why he's catching everybody's attention.
He is far left.
If it was just a little bit of a nudge, I don't think people would realize so much. It's
wackoism.
Uneasy,
right?
Is that it's so far? Like we've never even seen anything like this far on the other side. Do you know what I mean? Like people would talk about the PPC and Maxime Bernier, who not even close
to the right of what he is to the left,
has just as many qualifications. As far as if you were to have somebody in office based on what they've accomplished in the past, like he could be up there, and he is not far right as far as I'm concerned. He's just like, I want to respect people's freedom. I can't understand why we live in this country right now that someone that respects freedom in the truest sense of the word is considered to be far right. And then you can have somebody that is basically trying to repress freedom and freedom of speech. And the sad thing for me is hearing people say, like freedom, like D-U-M-B, like freedom, like it doesn't matter. Like we're free. We can do what we want, yada, yada, yada. And they don't understand that like it takes steps to get towards a point to where you don't have freedoms at all. So, I mean, let's say if there was just like 10 steps and we're on step number 2, I'm already fucking nervous because all it has to do is just start building up a little bit more steam. And the next thing you know, you don't have your freedoms anymore. And then people say like, where are we? I had another chat with a gentleman named Max Egan. Now he's very extreme to some people for sure. Like he's hardcore. I wouldn't even say extreme. He's hardcore. He believes that we are already beyond the point of no return. Like things are just going to have to get.
No, we are not anywhere near.
Things have to get a lot worse.
We're not anywhere near there. I think this government's on its way out.
Things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. And it's not going to simply take, and this is where I think people are wrong. We just need new government.
Correct.
And I don't think the problem is solved with we just need new government. Because those elements have already been pushed forward.
Yep, we need new government. We need to be very forceful. They don't go backwards. No, we need forceful action against the political class. We do. And,
right. Okay. But that's not going to be the conservatives, though. Like people are talking about like Pierre, like he's going to be the savior. I'm actually really concerned that what brought Justin Trudeau into power is going to be the same thing that brings another problem into politics. Is everyone voted for Justin Trudeau? He got a majority government, and everyone thought, well, this is going to be better than Harper. And now we're doing the same thing. We're saying, well, okay, Justin Trudeau, obviously he has to go. Like, I mean, I don't want him there. And I for sure don't want him there. I don't have a distaste for a lot of people. And I will go very close to saying that, I hate the man. I hate what he put me through anyways. I don't hate him. I hate what he put me through. I
actually don't like the man at all.
And Pierre's going to come in, and what if he gets a majority government? And like the rungs have already been pushed forward.
Well,
like politicians don't give power back.
It depends on the politician.
He found a voice. He found a voice when there was the truckers' convoy, when it was safe to say something. He wasn't there cheering on the convoy when they were making their way to Ottawa. So it's not to say whether or not he actually really supports freedom of speech. It's not to say whether or not he really supported the convoy, but he sure got in there when it was convenient, opposed to like when we needed a voice, opposed to, and this is not about political affiliation, okay? Like your politics, and it doesn't matter to me. But the only person that was screaming freedom from the top of their lungs the whole way through was the PPC and Maxime Bernier. And love him or hate him, like, Randy Hillier, he was a very controversial figure, and he was really rocking the boat. Like he was taking pictures at Christmas. I think he had like 30 people over for Christmas, and he posted that picture, and he was hanging out with people during the pandemic. And it's not to necessarily condone what he was doing. It was a very uncertain time, but these were people that were telling you from the get-go that we are against mandates. We would never put you through mandates. It's up to the individual to do what they want with their body, while everybody else was saying something different. And thank God for our Canadian Senate, that better late than never, that finally pulled through in regards to democracy and making sure that what was just happened. But in regards to like repercussions, Justin Trudeau called an Emergencies Act against his very own citizens. Why?
When there was no
because
when there was no dire,
when there was freedom of speech and expression.
Right.
And they were also invited into the city. Like if they didn't want the trucker convoy
That's
here,
true.
they would have never made it in. So that was something that was decided upon. Like government, like they just made sure that they weren't going to be impeding, like with emergency service vehicles, things of that nature. It's not like they went through some type of checkpoint, unwanted and ended up in this city. It was something that was organized. And then people say, well, they stayed here too long. Well, okay, yeah. Maybe they did.
But what did they do about it? Nothing. What did they do to dissuade it? Nothing. They had all these options and opportunities. Talk was cheap. The mayor was, Watson, was flimsy and weak at best when he was addressing them. We saw this from coming home from St. Martin. I was on vacation. We didn't even know this was going down. We're like, oh my God, like day 2 of the vacation. It was like March or January. I'm trying to think, around maybe the 18th at the time, maybe a little earlier. They're already starting to form and make their way across the country. What did we do? And mayor goes, just be respectful of our city. It was a joke. It was a joke. I will say it was a joke because it was weak. What they should have done was what Jean Chrétien and the real leader Harper and them would have said, all right, guys, we respect your right to protest. You have 3 days or a week. He would have given them a time frame to come in and get out. And it would have been respected. And it just would have been. And I believe that any one of those leaders would have went down to the hill with an armed detail and talked. They had guts. They would go out and speak. Or at least on the big screen from their house, because it's a pandemic, they could do a Zoom call and talk right to the population. There was all sorts of things they could have done. They did not do. And, calling them racists and misogynists and all this nonsense, and it's Justin Trudeau's favorite word is to demonize anyone that disagrees with him as a racist or a misogynist. You can't do that and not expect to incite a problem. Yet, I tell you what, I walked down it. You remember, I wasn't for the truckers. I walked through it. I was never really for or against that protest, other than they had the right to protest and they have a democratic right to espouse and push their freedoms. They do have these rights. You got to respect that, whether you agree with them or not. I would say about 85% of the people, at least I walked through, were very respectful, if not 90% of the population there the whole time. Yes, you have radicals in every group, but you have radicals in all protests. Black Lives Matter has radicals. Antifa has radicals. Most of them do protest peacefully. But you got an element that loves to deface statues and burn down churches. That's not cool either. But somehow they get a pass on that stuff because it sits with the government's mandate. And that is the problem. It's supposed to be the people's mandate, not the government's mandate that they respect. And the other part of the problem is you and I live in a government city that most of their checks here are cut by their masters on the Hill. So they don't want to rock the boat. They always hate anything not NDP or Liberal because they believe that rubber stamps their jobs, where they get pretty cushy treatment to do very little in half the cases to get way overpaid. Now, a lot of people in the government work their asses off too. I'm not talking about those people, but half don't. And these people automatically go against any kind of view you and I may have. And I'm a moderate. Like, I would like to look at you as a moderate too. We're pretty moderate guys. That's a problem in itself. The bureaucracy is a problem. I mean, Jean-Guy Bourignon, I've had him on my podcast. Jean-Guy, big guy, covering he's fighting cancer. God bless that guy. He's such a good soul. We talk about why people are leaving Canada in record numbers. Emigration, the number of people leaving Canada is at a record high. Guyana, Forbes Burnham, started implementing all these radical socialist policies. 1/10 of the population left before 1973, 75. 1/10 of the population. This is a country of only about 700,000 at the time, dropped to like 600,000 and plus. That was it. Imagine Canada's population drops 4 million in the next 2 years because of the policies Trudeau continues to enact. And keeping him in office, this will happen. This is no joke.
I have a number of
people
friends
with means and
that
money.
have left.
People and they can still vote. The funny thing is, and the irony is, he gave you the right to vote as an expat now, so you can vote against him from living in Costa Rica, where you pay way less taxes and you have better healthcare to service delivery. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of these things. I mean, you should.
Yeah, I have an exit plan for sure.
You should.
And I have a number of friends that have left already. I know people that immigrated to this country and left once all the mandates started to come into place. They said they know what this is. They know how this feels, and they wanted to escape it. That's the thing, is that people came here for freedom, and they came from places that weren't free. And the people that I've seen leave the most are the people that wanted to immigrate here. I know one gentleman, 7 years he waited to finally get to become a Canadian citizen. And then a couple of months after that, it was just right around the beginning of COVID. And he's like, nope,
screw that. See ya.
I'm not doing this.
Yep. Don't blame him.
I've been here before. That's what they said. I've been here before. And people that come from those types of countries, socialist countries or dictatorships or anything close, I mean, they'll tell you, I know what this feels like. You had mentioned just like the first couple of steps in regards to, suppressing information. I mean, even Theo Fleury, should be in the Hall of Fame, won about every championship you can win as a hockey player.
Yeah, had 1,000 points, all sorts of stuff.
Trauma.
Yes.
Right. He was he was a victim of sexual abuse his career. And he said that, like trauma's trauma. And the trauma that he was feeling, like the emotional trauma and the segregation and things of that nature,
the pandemic,
were happening during the pandemic, was triggering his trauma. So, it's
well, there's no doubt about it. And
that was a very, very powerful statement to me.
There's no doubt about it. Even looking at what you were saying about emigration and people leaving socialist countries that turned into a disaster. The irony is some of the countries that are booming, Guyana is actually the world's fastest economy as of 2021. They've discovered 21 oil wells. Imagine 783,000 or 800,000 people sitting on $1 trillion worth of oil wealth. And they're starting to really plan how to extract this. Their economy has grown something like 40 to 55% per annum the last 2 years in a row. The economy literally doubled in 2 years in economic strength. Croatia is now one of the best places to invest in. It was a despotic hole 30 years ago. El Salvador under Nayib Bukele is now becoming a very strong place for freedom and democracy, which was a few short years ago a complete disaster. So there's so many options now in a global community that these politicians listening and watching, because I know they are, because the CTRC is going to love to tune into this. You guys got to respect what's going on the globe too, and realize we all have options to leave here if we don't want to be here, and that's to the detriment of the country, because people with skills and talent and ambition are the ones that leave. It's not the complacent people; mm-hmm. It's the people who actually have the fortitude and the know-how to succeed. Go elsewhere, and it doesn't matter what age they are.
Pushing a lot of change,
and they can be 70 and they'll emigrate somewhere for the last 10, 15 years of their lives to live happy. They don't care. It's pushing too much. I'm going to show one excerpt before we go. I think everyone needs to subscribe to your podcast. We do have different views, but one thing we do have in common, my friend, is a massive respect for freedom and democracy. And I think that is just fundamental. So you saw my comment there, but here's...
Government's not going to save you. When was the last time you had a politician in your neighborhood when the lights went out? Never. When there's a blackout, are they driving around with generators in their trunk and passing those out? They don't care. At the end of the day, a politician has one goal, and that is to get reelected. So they will say what they have to say, and then they don't do what they say they're going to do, and then we don't even put their feet to the fire. We just let them go, and we go, oh, well, politicians, you can't trust them. What?
That is in itself
Fucking politicians.
just a great ending to this show because, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end it on some positives here. You can get a VPN to secure your privacy. It's not so hard to get a second passport now. It's not so hard to emigrate to a country while still maintaining much of your workflow if you're self-employed. If you're, you could even have a construction company registered here, move it out, but still keep the contracts here and pay your taxes that are due here, but no longer be tied to the system. Consult your financial experts on these things, but at the same time, and report your taxes properly. But at the same time, there's nothing against the law for you to do these things. For now, who knows what's going to go on in the future. But our forefathers would be rolling in their graves. I know my grandfather would be cursing and swearing, saying, what the hell did I fight World War II for, seeing the garbage that's happening in our society today. The amount of division just because people have different views. We get into the gender debate, which is really much more about sexuality and sexual preference. It's not gender, it's sexual preference in most cases. But we should be just tolerant of each other and not care about that stuff. But they've weaponized it, much like they weaponized us versus them. They love to do this. And nobody has been worse than the Trudeau government in the history of running our country than this. And I agree with you, and ladies and gentlemen, on this vote. Yeah, Poilievre will probably win in a landslide next election. He needs the boots taken to him constantly and be constantly reminded and told, you are not to dissuade or move away from your agenda that you promised to run on. We are going to hold you accountable or we're going to haul you out of office. It's the end of story. And the fear needs to be put to them all. And, I couldn't be more passionate about this because I'm disgusted with what I see right now. And this is coming from somebody who's positive and fun-loving with a happy hour. Let that resonate and sink in. What change do you want to be to make it better? Because we need all of you. We need everyone to unite. Doesn't matter what political stripe you are. Realize that your freedoms are at stake. And if you don't realize it, then I'm sorry, we can't really save you because you're probably brainwashed by the system at this stage. But that's how I feel. Any parting thoughts, brother, on this serious topic?
That was ending positively. Holy shit. Hold on. I'll take over. Hold on. Rob, take a break. Guys.
Well, this is I had to sink the message in. You can do better. We can do better. That's the positive. Right. But listen, you got to hear the hard stuff first. And this is reality.
At the end of the day,
in good shape.
People don't know what they don't know. And that's okay. And when they do know, I'll be waiting for them with open arms. In the meantime, it's really about where you're going to put your time and where you're going to put your focus. And I put my time and focus into people that will listen. They don't even have to agree, but just people that will listen. It also comes down to identifying who to have that conversation with, which was a great conversation that I had with Dr. Julie Ponesse from the Democracy Fund, to where there's no point wasting your time talking to a wall. Like, you wouldn't do that. Literally, you would not talk to a wall.
Have
so why talk to a person that's not open, right? And to do your best to empathize, to really listen and ask good questions. I mean, from people that don't share your point of view if they're willing to have a conversation. And I'll tell you why, because it leads to a better baseline and like a common denominator. And the more that know thy enemy, the more that you, not saying that they're enemies, but knowing more about the people that have opposite views from you makes it a more constructive conversation with the next person that maybe doesn't share your view, and you can learn more from them because you're not starting from the bottom. You're starting from a little bit higher up. And that's how we get towards greater understanding with one another, because at the end of the day, we need healthy opposition. When we stop listening to the people that don't share our point of view, and that is both sides, then everything breaks down. And that's exactly what the powers that be want. And if you think that I'm like a Looney Tune because I say, they and them, like, believe me, it's happening. And Rob, thank you very much for, having me on, and thank you very much for having these discussions, because it's really important to the health of the Canadian democracy. I really hope that people take the time to start taking a look into things that maybe they don't want to look at when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of expression, because believe me, it is under fire. And I know it's not at that point for a lot of people to where it's uncomfortable. But once you get to that point that it's uncomfortable, in a lot of cases, there's no going back. So protect it at all costs.
And I agree with you, and come together as a community and discuss things. And we can positively fix this. We have to. I didn't mean to get dark there for a bit, but the message had to be heard, because we're not in a good place, and we need to fix it and come together. Listen, you were a tremendous guest. Ladies and gentlemen, whatever you decide to do, have a terrific day. It's always a pleasure to have you view these podcasts. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to subscribe to the Launchpad podcast. Jay's got a growing channel, 2,500 plus subscribers now. Help out his community, because he really talks about a lot of enlightening things, and there's some great content. Ladies and gentlemen, whatever you decide to do, have a terrific day. This is Rob and Jay from The Drunken Gray.